Well, here with the mandate, we are back at it on the streets of Washington, D.C. And Peterson, today we find ourselves in front of the U.S. Capitol building.
Yep, there it is, all its glory. We had a nice tour a couple weeks back, right, last month in there with one of the staffers. Always good to go and see it, especially post Steve Baker coming and doing his rounds, right? Many Capitol Hill police happy to see him because they love his reporting.
Well, I always mention how Congress is not in session, and they actually are not this week. Not surprising, because if you're a House member, you're only working for 8 days in the month of April, which I find, you know, if you can get the work, it's pretty good. I don't know if they're doing the greatest work on behalf of the American people yet or not, but they, you know, that's the job that they have. They didn't make the schedule. Only Steve Scalise made that schedule. This
is the best stop because this is what Jill cannot stop talking about.
It's the fact that
they don't really work. And if you look over there, it's kind of, there's not a lot of people there. And there is no one working there, in fact, today or this week, which is why no one in Congress is around. We're not even bothering to look people up for interviews because they are on vacation.
Well, let's go through and actually talk about what the founders intended this to be, because I don't think that an 8-day work for the entire month is really what they had in mind. So what did they want to see from Congress?
So obviously, you should know, Congress is there to make the law. They pass the laws of the United States of America, so they shape federal law and craft it. A lot of the Constitution doesn't fill out itself, so there's deep statutory law that even adds to the courts and how big the courts are, how many people are on the court, and then there's the kind of laws that you and I are used to that they're making every single day. They also have oversight functions as well. But what I want to emphasize here, because we want to talk about how Congress went wrong, what I want to emphasize is how practical the founders were. Here's the thing. They knew that it wouldn't be a hall full of statesmen and all intelligent people. Tocqueville, who loved the American experiment, used to talk about this. He said, he was very impressed with the Senate. He thought there were some incredible speakers there, and being a snooty European at the time, he was sort of surprised at how great some of the senators were. And then he went over to the House, and there was a guy standing on a desk with a Bowie knife, just yelling. And that's sort of the madness of American democracy at its best. So I want to explain this, that they didn't think they were all statesmen. They had a practical understanding of it before we get to what's wrong. So here's what they knew. They knew that in a democratic system, when you elect people, a lot of them aren't going to be so great. And they're all going to gravitate towards one side or another. And so different sides are basically going to fund different candidates. So Jesse Unruh was a very talented California politician, used to say money is the mother's milk of politics. And of course it is. That's just the reality of it. But like in your local city council meeting, so-and-so's paid by the developers, so-and-so's paid by the unions. So I kind of know where they stand. And the idea was, if you start fighting, though, about those things, right? Even if both sides, even if there's two people who are both really beholden with money to one side or another, if people are watching and they see them actually fight, then you have a great chance that you actually get somewhere good in the end, even if it's messy. And that is really what Unruh also said was about California politics, what applies to the founders' vision, practical vision of the Congress. What he said was, you don't belong here. You don't belong in Sacramento. You don't belong in D.C. If you can't take the lobbyists' money and whatever else they throw at you, he mentioned a couple other things, and then wake up the next day every once in a while and vote against them. And that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, before we get to all the problems that you're talking about, because there are many, this is Washington, D.C. after all, let's go through and break down the House versus the Senate, because they have very different jobs. One, we know if you're in the House, you're basically always constantly running for re-election. Those guys that are on the Senate, they, guys and women, they get to go through and live a little bit easier life because they don't have to constantly run for re-election with their 6-year terms. But break down the difference between the House and the Senate for us.
Yeah, so they were very aware that 2 years isn't a lot of time. So even back in the time of the founding, that meant you really are always running for office. You can't stop asking people for money, whereas in the Senate with 6 years makes a big difference. So the joke is you can do whatever you want in the first year of the Senate. No one will even pay attention. You can vote however you want. And you're golden. You have more leeway, right? And what they understood is that you need two houses because they saw places like in Pennsylvania where there's only one Congress, right? There's no Senate. And what they saw there was a lot of like democracy gone wrong, like people running over, abusing the rights of various minorities, not caring about what the courts said, because there was no check on the Democratic branch. So the Senate, they saw the Senate was a great idea to slow things down. And every once in a while, everyone gets up in arms about something, but they're wrong. Like, I don't know, COVID, a couple other things have happened recently. So every once in a while when they're wrong, you want the cooler house, the guys who don't have to worry about getting elected, every 5 seconds, to sort of come in and say, we're going to slow this down. Now, on the other side of it, the House is more Democratic, so the House is always like, Senate is where bills go to die, and there's tension between them. And this is the one part, maybe, of this entire city that still exists, just like the founders intended. It's the division between the House and Senate, because, as I asked a buddy a couple years back, is it still the case that, the House and Senate are different and divided and fighting? And he just looked at me, he happened to be from the House, and he said, our bars are better, our women are hotter, and everything's better here. Like he was talking about a frat house. So there's still some healthy tension between those two parties.
Well, there's some healthy tension, but again, let's go back to the problems, because there are a lot of problems. And we even see this now with Donald Trump. It doesn't matter even if you have Congress on your side or not, even if you have the numbers, things are still difficult to get through. We hear Donald Trump all the time talk about one big, beautiful bill. Is it actually going to be one big, beautiful bill? Are they going to have to break it up into multiple bills? There's still problems, even if you're the party in charge getting things done here.
Yeah, so here's the sad reality of what you see behind us. I mean, the Supreme Court was covered when we visited it, and it's a beautiful building, and it's still a powerful institution. Right? If anything, we're talking about it being too powerful sometimes. It's a working institution. The problem with Congress right there is that that's not a working institution. Not only are they not working, as Jill's pointing out, but they do not, in fact, pass and wrangle about law, and they really don't do their job. I mean, they are the creatures of the administrative state. All the other buildings around here are part of the regulatory state. All the bureaucracy, that's what controls with people in there. So they don't get things done. They don't pass budgets. They haven't passed a budget in decades. They just kind of, they're like stewards. They're like caretakers of the bureaucracy. And that's a real problem for America.
Well, and we make it easier for the lobbyists to come find the lawmakers than we do everybody, all the constituents that they are actually representatives for. I don't think that we can talk about U.S. Congress without including a little bit on the lobbyists.
Yeah, so when you say money is the mother's milk of politics, you mean you get paid based on people giving you campaign dollars so you can stay in office, depending on how you vote and what kind of laws you make. So you see this in egregious ways in the state legislatures when you can copy and paste certain laws, and the copy and paste will show you that there are laws in lots of states because lobbyists or corporate interests paid for certain legislation to be passed. And here's the thing, here's the problem. You want to, in fact, pay staffers more and have more staff if you want less or healthier government, because the problem is otherwise the lobbyists will do it for you. So like you want to know an argument, right, for one side or another, what do? You call up a lobbyist because they're super smart, they get paid more, and they're going to tell you what the argument is, the best argument you should make, right, if you are in Congress. The problem is that so much of the lobby now, though, is not even corporate interest, which is a problem in itself, or can be, but it's the administrative state itself. It's government itself.
Well, with all that as the groundwork, let's bring this back to Donald Trump and the mandate going through with that fight against the administrative state. So what needs to happen now if you're Trump and just kind of exerting some of his power that he can to get some things done here?
Well, as we've seen with this Congress so far, and we talk about on the show every day, right, there's not a hell of a lot of movement because Congress is a unique animal in this day and age. No matter the party, they're not the ones they don't really pass budgets, they don't really make laws. So when you look at this, the only way to get anything done is for a president to squeeze Congress. Congress has its own agenda that's based on the median or the aggregate of a lot of the buildings around here and the opinion therein. So how are you going to get them to move them if you're an outlier? You have to actually scare them. And that means picking up the phone, that means doing a lot of work, and that means saying, like, we will spend money to destroy you and primary you. And what you see happening, especially on the right now in Republican land, is people are waking up to the fact that that's actually possible, and they're terrified, they're scared.
Well, how would you give Congress a grade thus far? I know we've just kind of started. We're only towards the end of April right now, but what would you say, how would you think that they've done thus far?
I don't know, Jill, what grade would you give them? You tell me.
I think my grade might be more harsh than your grade.
It depends on how much lethargy do you assume? Like how much do you assume Congress is just fundamentally broken? You could just give it an F until it sort of resurrects itself somehow. You hope it does in the future, and we actually pass budgets again. But that's been 20 years, so I would say that for what you could expect if you were sitting there in the White House now, I mean, this is at most average. If not much worse than that.
I think it's funny. Some of my friends that aren't really that political are like, well, I mean, you guys, everybody on the right, they tend to just interview the same people from Congress over and over and over again. I said, yeah, because we only have a handful of good ones to choose from. And then you have to figure out, the scheduling and all that. But I wish that we had more to choose from, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, it also would be great if there were more of them who weren't so willing to go on TV when actually doing this kind of work, right? We need people who would actually pass laws, who work on legislation, who actually do the job. And the problem is a lot of these people, you feel like they'd evaporate if they weren't in front of a camera, every day. And that's a real problem, because you're talking about a really important job, right, for any society, like running things, making laws. That takes a lot of years to get good at. It takes a lot of relationships to get good at. It takes a reputation you build up over decades in order to do that job well. And the problem is if all you want to do is have a bunch of followers, on the gram and go on TV, then you're not going to be able to do that job. And that's a real tragedy for America.